The legal showdown between Prince Harry and one of Britain's most powerful media groups has taken another dramatic twist, with revelations in court suggesting that even Prince William's private events may have been drawn into the orbit of newspaper tactics that lawyers now describe as systematic blagging. On a rainy morning at the High Court in London, Harry's barristers laid out claims that Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, authorised and benefited from a culture of deception that went far beyond routine reporting. The suggestion that William himself, the heir to the throne, might have had his own events targeted by investigators adds a new and explosive dimension to a case that has already gripped the press, politicians, and public alike. In a packed courtroom where every bench was filled with journalists, lawyers, and curious members of the public, Harry's counsel delivered what observers described as a meticulously prepared yet emotionally charged argument. They alleged that private investigators were instructed to obtain confidential details about royal schedules, friendships, and even security arrangements through methods that crossed the line into illegality. The technique at the heart of the accusation, blagging, refers to tricking organizations into disclosing personal information by posing as someone entitled to it, such as a bank official, medical worker, or staff member. For decades, British tabloids have faced accusations of deploying such tactics, but this latest courtroom moment was striking for one reason. It tied the practice not only to Harry and his circle, but also to William, a figure traditionally portrayed by the press as more cautious and aligned with the institution. The claim left the court hushed. For years, the narrative has centred on Harry as the royal at war with the media, fighting a battle that began with the trauma of losing his mother Diana amid a media chase and resurfaced with his decision, alongside Meghan, to leave frontline royal duties. William, by contrast, has often been framed as the royal who endured intrusion but accepted it as the price of duty. The idea that his own private life could also have been compromised by alleged deception from one of Britain's most influential publishing empires disrupts that careful image and forces fresh questions about how deep press misconduct may have gone. Outside the court, the story was already dominating headlines across the world. Television cameras lined the steps, with broadcasters from Europe, the United States, and Australia reporting live updates. Analysts noted that while this case formally focuses on Harry, Elton John, Sadie Frost, and several others who allege unlawful information gathering, the mention of William's name represented a turning point. If substantiated, it widens the potential scope of intrusion from being a matter of celebrity gossip to an issue cutting directly to the heart of the monarchy itself. The lawyers representing Harry were careful in their phrasing, noting that references to William came up in the materials uncovered in disclosure and were part of a wider pattern of alleged investigation work commissioned by male titles. This was not limited to Prince Harry or those close to him, the barrister said in a calm but pointed tone. We have reason to believe that even events connected to His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales may have been targeted by such unlawful methods. The choice of words, reason to believe, was cautious, yet it carried enough weight to send ripples through both the media gallery and the palace press office, which has thus far refused to comment. In legal terms, the case pits Harry and fellow claimants against Associated Newspapers over allegations ranging from phone tapping to the hiring of private investigators for unlawful purposes. Associated Newspapers has categorically denied all wrongdoing, branding the lawsuit a preposterous fishing expedition designed to vilify the press and rewrite history. In its filings, the company insists that its journalists operate within the law and that any investigator work was legitimate and industry standard. But Harry's team argues that documents and testimony paint a different picture, one in which blagging was not incidental but systematic, authorized at high levels, and concealed from the public for decades. The courtroom drama is not happening in isolation. It comes against the backdrop of a wider battle between Britain's royals and its press, a relationship that has been fraught, transactional, and sometimes toxic. For Harry, this case represents the culmination of years of frustration. He has long argued that the relentless intrusion of the tabloid press, not only damaged his mental health, but also endangered his family. In his memoir and public statements, he has linked the pain of his mother's death to the pursuit of accountability for press behaviour. By taking associated newspapers to court, he has pushed further than any royal of his generation, willing to risk the glare of cross-examination in pursuit of reform. Observers note that the introduction of William's name complicates matters further. The brothers, whose relationship has been strained in recent years, now find themselves connected once again through the shadow of media intrusion. While Harry has chosen confrontation, William has typically opted for silence. Yet if his own events were indeed targeted, silence may no longer be enough. Palace sources, speaking anonymously to broadcasters, admitted there is unease about the idea of William being dragged into the case, even tangentially. The palace's traditional stance, never complain, never explain, has already been tested in the age of social media and rolling news. Now it faces a direct challenge, whether to continue ignoring courtroom allegations or to defend the heir to the throne more actively. What makes the allegation so sensitive is not simply the idea of intrusion, but the potential implications for national security. Royal events involve not only family members, but also state planning, security services, and diplomatic considerations. If investigators employed by a newspaper obtained confidential details about locations, timings, or security, the ramifications could be serious. Legal experts noted in interviews that blagging for celebrity gossip is one thing, but blagging related to a future monarch's activities crosses into territory of national interest. This is not just about privacy anymore, one barrister unaffiliated with the case remarked. It raises potential security concerns, which makes the stakes infinitely higher. The High Court proceedings are expected to stretch on for months, with Harry's lawyers pledging to present a detailed catalogue of alleged instances of unlawful information gathering. Associated Newspapers has assembled a formidable defence team of its own, determined not only to deny the claims, but also to portray Harry as waging a vendetta against the press. At times, the courtroom exchanges have been bitter, with accusations of exaggeration, misrepresentation, and even manipulation of public sympathy. Yet for those who watched closely, the mention of William signalled a shift. What began as Harry's personal fight could become a constitutional flashpoint, dragging the future king and the monarchy itself into the eye of the storm. The introduction of William's name into the proceedings instantly changed the tone of commentary surrounding the case. Until now, much of the public and press discussion had centred on Harry's motivations, with critics claiming he was bitter and obsessed with fighting newspapers, and supporters seeing him as a lone warrior seeking justice. The mention of his brother shifts the narrative away from personal vendetta and towards institutional concern. Suddenly, it is not just Harry's battle, but one that brushes against the credibility of the monarchy itself. Even among commentators who are often sympathetic to the press, there was a noticeable hesitation. If the heir to the throne's private events were targeted, then the matter could no longer be dismissed as one prince's grievance with journalists. For ordinary members of the public, the story rekindles memories of the phone hacking scandal that exploded more than a decade ago. At that time, the revelations about illegal interception of voicemails shook confidence in the media, led to the closure of the News of the World, and triggered the Leveson inquiry into press ethics. Many thought the lessons had been learned, that reforms and new regulations had curbed the worst practices. Yet Harry's case now suggests that the culture of intrusion may have persisted far longer, in subtler but equally damaging forms such as blagging. To many, it raises the question of whether the press ever truly changed, or whether methods simply evolved behind the scenes. For Harry himself, this lawsuit is as much about principle as it is about personal redress. In his public statements, he has described a sense of responsibility to act not only for himself and Meghan, but also for others who lack the resources to challenge newspaper giants. His willingness to confront the tabloids head-on has earned him both admiration and criticism. Admirers see bravery in taking on institutions that many fear, while critics accuse him of undermining press freedom. Yet the persistence with which he has pursued the Mail publisher, despite legal costs, public scrutiny, and further strain on his relationship with his family, underscores his determination to expose what he views as systemic abuse. The revelation about William, however, could create an awkward dynamic between the brothers. For years, royal watchers have speculated about the personal rift that opened between them, especially after Harry and Meghan stepped down from royal duties and moved to California. While William has avoided public comment on the disputes, insiders have portrayed him as dismayed by his brother's attacks on the institution. Now, though, their paths converge again, not through reconciliation, but through shared victimhood at the hands of the press. The irony is striking. The very newspapers that helped fuel tension between the brothers may also have ensnared them both in the same web of intrusion. Associated Newspapers has fought vigorously to contain the fallout. Its representatives described the claims as sensationalist and exaggerated, pointing out that neither William nor Kate has come forward personally to join the lawsuit. The company's strategy appears to rest on portraying Harry as unreliable and emotionally driven, a man who sees conspiracies in every headline. Yet the longer the case goes on, the more documents and allegations surface, keeping the story alive in the public eye. For the Mail Group, whose reputation is built on its dominance of middle-market readers and its claim to journalistic integrity, the stakes are immense. A judgment against it would not only cost financially, but also strike a blow to its credibility. The legal question at the centre of the case concerns whether unlawful methods were systematically deployed to obtain information that could then be used in stories or influence editorial decisions. Lawyers for Harry's side argue that blagging was not a rogue activity carried out by a handful of investigators, but rather a culture tolerated and encouraged within the organisation. They cite invoices, records of private investigators, and circumstantial evidence tying stories to unlawfully obtained details. Associated Newspapers, in turn, argues that much of the material is circumstantial, that journalists obtained information through legitimate sources, and that the claimants are retrospectively attributing malice where none existed. Beyond the legal technicalities, the broader significance of the case lies in its impact on the ongoing debate about privacy and press freedom. In a democratic society, newspapers play a vital role in holding power to account. Supporters of the press argue that restrictions or heavy damages could chill investigative journalism and weaken the ability to expose wrongdoing. But campaigners for privacy respond that no freedom is absolute, and that the deliberate deception of blagging is not journalism, but subterfuge. This tension between a free press and the right to privacy has defined British media debates for decades, and this case brings it once again to the forefront, only this time with the added gravity of involving the royal family's highest figures. For William and Kate, the implications are particularly delicate. Their public image rests on accessibility and relatability, yet also on dignity and control. If stories about them were built on unlawfully obtained details, the sense of betrayal would be profound. Imagine medical information from Kate's pregnancies being accessed by strangers, or travel details of royal tours being leaked. Such scenarios underline why the allegation carries weight far beyond gossip. It touches on security, health, and the right to private family life. Palace officials, true to form, have declined to comment, but insiders hint at quiet concern. The institution has long adhered to the mantra of silence, but as legal arguments pile up, silence may eventually prove unsustainable. The case also highlights a generational divide within the monarchy. Older members have tended to tolerate press intrusion as an unavoidable cost of public life. Harry, representing a younger and more confrontational approach, refuses to accept that compromise. William, until now, has leaned closer to the traditional stance, cooperating with the press where possible. But if his own family has been targeted, he may face a choice: remain silent and hope the storm passes, or acknowledge the possibility of victimhood and side, however reluctantly, with his brother's critique of the press. Either option carries risks. Silence risks appearing complicit, while confrontation risks escalating hostilities with media outlets on which the royals still depend for coverage. Internationally, the spectacle of the royals battling tabloids once again reinforces long-held perceptions about Britain's press culture. In the United States, where privacy protections are stronger, many commentators express shock that such practices could occur in the first place. European outlets see the story as evidence of Britain's unresolved struggle between tabloid sensationalism and democratic accountability. For the monarchy, which relies heavily on global image and soft power, being associated with victimhood at the hands of its own press is both sympathetic and damaging. Sympathetic because it humanizes the royals, damaging because it suggests vulnerability and dysfunction. As the hearings continue, the case has begun to take on the character of a wider referendum on trust. Trust in the press, trust in institutions, and even trust within the royal family itself. Harry has positioned himself as a whistleblower of sorts, exposing practices he believes are rotten. Associated Newspapers, by contrast, insists it is defending not only its own reputation, but also the principle of press freedom. And caught between them, perhaps unwillingly, are William and Kate, whose potential involvement represents the most sensitive development yet. The full trial, if it proceeds, could stretch well into next year. Witness statements are expected to detail personal experiences of intrusion, potentially laying bare years of harassment and deception. Already, figures like Elton John have spoken of the toll such practices took on their private lives. Sadie Frost has recalled the destabilizing effect of seeing personal details splashed across tabloids without understanding how they were obtained. Baroness Lawrence, who has dedicated her life to campaigning for justice after the murder of her son, Stephen, describes the alleged intrusion into her life as an appalling betrayal. These stories, when presented together, paint a picture not of isolated excess, but of a systemic disregard for privacy. And yet the spectre of William looms over all of this. The possibility that his own family was targeted by blaggers changes the narrative from one of celebrity privacy to one of national consequence. Whether or not he chooses to acknowledge it, his name is now part of the legal record. His silence will be scrutinized as closely as Harry's words. The monarchy's careful balancing act with the press, cultivated over decades, has been destabilized by a single line in a lawyer's statement. That reality alone ensures that this case, whatever its eventual outcome, will be remembered as a defining moment in the long, uneasy relationship between Britain's royals and its newspapers. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Bye-bye. See you then in the comment section.